time to build a third Star Wars diorama. For some time, I have been planning to add a third Star Wars diorama to my collection. But that wouldn't be a off-the-shelf set. I would need to come up with something of my own. But before we go into the details, let's take a look of the current state of my Star Wars collection. So, here you can see my current Star Wars dioramas. Originally, I just bought them because I liked how they looked. But once the second one, the Emperor's Throne Room, was completed and I placed them in this glass cabinet, I realized that they both have Luke Skywalker in them, and both of them are about his journey to becoming a Jedi Knight. In the Dagobah scene, he is training with Yoda, and in Emperor's Throne Room, he is a full Jedi Knight and faces Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader. Now, I think that adding in a third diorama would complete this collection nicely, as we already have a diorama of the second movie of the original trilogy and also the third movie. It would make sense to have one from the first movie too. That would need to be the starting point of Luke Skywalker's journey as a Jedi Knight. Two scenes really come into my mind. One of those would be the lightsaber training on board the Millennium Falcon. There, Luke trains without his vision, so he sort of uses the Force for the first time to sense the lightsaber training droid that he is training against. And that could be the starting point of his journey as a Jedi. But I am thinking that the actual starting point of his journey was earlier in the story. Specifically, I am thinking the scene in Obi-Wan's hut, and the moment when Obi-Wan gives Luke his father's lightsaber and also tells him some stories about his father. So I decided to go ahead with that scene. For the previous video, I had acquired and assembled Obi-Wan's hut playset. That set would provide me with minifigures and plenty of parts for Obi-Wan's hut as well. But that playset is not part of the diorama range, so therefore it doesn't come with that black base that the dioramas usually come with. So I would need to get that separately. And that is where the Mos Espa Podrace diorama comes in. I am planning to steal the base from that set, and as it is a desert scene, some of the other parts might come handy too. One limitation that I have to work with is that I want that the third diorama will also fit inside this IKEA Kallax glass cabinet. Height-wise, I couldn't place the third diorama similarly as the first two. There just wasn't any room for it. Instead, I would need to place two dioramas next to each other, and the third one at an elevated position. Now it would make sense that the first and the second diorama are next to each other and the third one is on its own level. Or alternatively, the second and the third one are on the same level and the first one is placed separately. The problem with that idea is that the second diorama, the Dagobah scene, is actually larger than the third diorama. So there isn't any room next to it. But there would be some room next to the third diorama, the Emperor's Throne Room. And that is why I decided to place the first diorama, Obi-Wan's hut, next to the third diorama, Emperor's Throne Room. Even though that means that when you follow the story, you start from the lower level, then move up to the higher level, and then come back to the lower level. Perhaps I need to add some arrows or sequence numbers to the diorama. I'll think about that later on. But at this point, the next step was to build a size mockup to see how large my Obi-Wan's hut diorama could be, so that all three would still fit inside the IKEA Kallax shelf glass cabinet. And here you can see that test build. It is as deep as the other dioramas, but it can only be 13 studs wide, so that it will still fit here. Now that I had the dimensions figured out, it was time to start the actual build. So the end goal was to transform this set with the base from this set and perhaps some other parts into a diorama with the dimensions of this size. And of course, if at all possible, make it stylistically match with these bigger diorama sets, because this is a more simple playset. The first step was to remove the pot racers from this diorama. The next step was to steal this black frame from the set. Next, it was time to resize the frame. These two sides were already of correct size. As usual, the build table is a mess, but with some additional parts, I was able to build this base. But the front section was a bit problematic to come up with. And that was because my base width was 13 studs, meaning that it was odd numbered. And that meant that the stock pieces that hold these print pieces on front of the dioramas needed to be shifted by half a stud. Without that shift, the print pieces wouldn't be centered. I had some difficulties coming up with a solution where those knot pieces were off-centered with jumper plates, but the build was still sturdy enough. In the end, I decided to build a bigger, solid front section and then just combine that bigger section with jumper plates to the bottom of the base. Like this. The front frame actually has half a stud gaps in it, but the print pieces are going to hide those. Once these missing tiles are added to the frame and this one plate is added in, I think this should be fairly solid. And now the base of my diorama is complete. I need to order a couple of black tiles to complete it. I didn't have any in my collection. Now that this new diorama base was complete, it was time to transfer Obi-Wan's hut on top of it. First, I just decided to test where I would like my minifigures to be in the completed diorama. I also decided that this diorama would have a back wall and a wall on the left side, but no wall on the front or on the right-hand side. That meant that I needed to modify the original set quite a bit. I decided to keep the original back wall pretty much as is, as it was of correct width. But I completely removed the two hinge sections and built a new side wall from those parts. And this is the end result. I added jumper plates below the minifigures so I could place them in more interesting angles. And here you can see the new sidewall that I built from the parts of the original set. Now I am planning to build a more detailed version later on, but this original version was just more of a proof of concept. With this, I can easily see if the completed set of 3 dioramas is going to work inside this glass cabinet. And I think it is going to work. But of course, we need to replace those books with something else. And that will be the topic of the next video. I have already ordered a bunch of black Lego bricks and slope pieces. And with those, I'm gonna build a black eraser to replace those books. And also in the next video, I'm going to go through the plans on how to improve that Obi-Wan's hut diorama. It is still not up to the standard of the other 2 dioramas. If you want to get the notification as soon as that video is up, you should consider hitting that subscribe button down there. I will upload the next video ASAP, but remember, when a Sloth says that, it means as slowly as possible. Bye bye.